Hello friends, welcome to my moonlit studio. I had a couple beers last night, so I'm a bit dead. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Let's Talk with Physic. I haven't done one of these for a while. The gist of one of these videos is that I talk about multiple topics in one video, and today we'll be discussing Jake Paul and the way he's lied and manipulated people through Shane Dawson's documentary, and I will also be discussing some movies. So, let's do this. We're going to be first talking about Jake Paul and the manipulation he was dishing out in Shane Dawson's documentary. Are we surprised? No. Obviously not, because that's Jake Paul. He's a very manipulative person. There are ways in which he is a clever and deceptive person, and I can really understand how people could get a kind of sociopathic vibe from him, because he is very much into money. He likes money a lot, and he will do whatever it takes to make a lot of money. And he's even said before, if he hasn't made some stupid amount of money by the end of every day, he feels like he's a failure. So money's a big thing on Jake Paul's list, and in the documentary he was talking about the manipulation of children and getting them to buy into his merchandise. And he says that the idea of him manipulating kids into buying his merchandise is ridiculous. Sorry, what? Are you out of your goddamn mind?
I honestly think it's stupid that people think that's manipulative. Yeah, I mean,
you have been manipulating children since day one, not just into buying your merchandise, but buying into programs like Edfluence, by going onto panels where you discuss how much you can use your social status to influence people. You've sat in front of panels, being like one of the main guests, discussing how you can use your social position to influence people, especially when it comes to kids, which makes up your whole audience of millions and millions of people. Children don't really have the capacity to understand when they're being manipulated, and when it comes down to the money given to you, you fully well know that that's obviously coming from the parents. The kids will say, Mummy, I want Jake Paul merch, because I've been manipulated since day one. How are you not manipulating kids when you make a song dedicated to getting people to buy your merch? It's insanity that you would call it ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you would call it ridiculous. So this is one area in which Jake Paul is just not fooling anyone, I don't think. There's also instances regarding his relationship with Erica Costello, and how we just can't buy into that as well. It's a bit too obvious when you end up breaking up with her right after the documentary's finished. But as I say, what do we expect when Jake Paul has been manipulating people since day one? He makes incredibly fake staged videos, and then will go on to say that it isn't fake or staged, or he'll end up saying, oh, but what are you talking about? These are all just for entertainment purposes since day one, even though I didn't put that in the description, I didn't mention that in the video, I didn't have any disclaimers or anything like that, so why would you think that it isn't fake when I didn't tell you that at all, and I manipulated you into thinking that it was real? Why would you think that it isn't fake? Huh, guys? So yeah, he's a liar. He's a pathological, manipulative liar. He is a social influencer. He influences people, and he uses his power to do pretty bad things. When it comes to the use of his power, he has manipulated many girls into sleeping with him, and this is a horrible, horrible thing to do. I will not condone this in any way at all. I think cheating is a very bad thing. I now discussed this topic as well, and I completely agree with him. Cheating is not good. It's not a good thing to do, and Jake Paul is a prolific cheater. prolific cheater, a liar, etc. So I understand when Shane Dawson is looking into whether Jake Paul could potentially be a sociopath. And I've said this before, I really dislike the way Shane Dawson went about creating the documentary, especially when it came to the section on whether Jake Paul could be a sociopath. I think it was very, misinformed and really vilified mental health issues. And I can't stand that because I care a lot about mental health issues. So, let's move on now to discuss something else. Now let's move on to discuss some movies I've seen recently. First off, Bone Tomahawk is a horror adventure western film made in 2015. It gets a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, which is pretty formidable. In the dying days of the Old West, an elderly sheriff and his posse set out to rescue their town's doctor from cannibalistic cave dwellers. It is written and directed by S. Craig Zahler and stars Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson and Matthew Fox. I think this film is darn brilliant. I really do. I think it's hideously underrated. I really recommend you checking it out. It does have some excessive gore towards the end of the film, so if you're not into that kind of stuff, this might not be the film for you. But this is a fantastic example of how horror should be done, and I think bigger Hollywood horror productions can learn from this film. So we'll be comparing this film to another series in which I think there are some huge and important differences to be discussing. So let's get down to it. This film is incredibly underrated. Most people I talk to haven't really heard of it, but it's got gorgeous cinematography and it has some fantastic performances, especially Kurt Russell. He's just brilliant in everything I see him in. It's got some insanely violent scenes, and I think it's great when horror doesn't try to aim towards a 15 rating and is bold enough to go for full-on gore and violence. I think it's good fun. This film is such a great example of how horror should be done, and the main reason for this is the characters. This film has a selection of wonderfully developed characters. Now, a lot of people have an issue that this film is a bit slow, but I don't agree with that. A lot of people's idea of slow is dialogue-based stuff, character development, and I just don't understand what's slow about this. I think the dialogue is fantastic in this film. The first act of the film, the first two acts of the film are very much about building up these characters, defining them, and making us grow attached to these people, and this makes the end of the film one of the most tense third acts I've ever seen in a horror film. It really is, because a lot of horror films these days just don't have characters at all. So recently I rewatched Sinister, and then I watched the sequel, Sinister 2. The first film, whilst not being great on any level, it had some really good qualities to it. It had some subtlety, it had some fantastic music. For one of these larger Hollywood horror films, it had some excellent music, excellent sound design, and I really appreciate that. I really do. It also had actual characters. The character played by Ethan Hawke, he was a pretty crappy person, to be honest. He was a liar, he was putting his family in danger in aid of benefiting himself, and I thought that was great to see in one of these larger Hollywood horror productions. Now, moving on to Sinister 2, what happened? What on earth happened? We have some really poor performances. We have the main protagonist, Deputy So-and-so, or ex-Deputy So-and-so in this film. I guess he had a bit of character because this film is years after the first film. He's grown a bit and he's become more confident and he wants to continue trying to stop the Bagul and this whole problem. But then when it comes to the other characters, we have one of the main antagonists, which is just your typical bad father, your typical abusive father. I want to know his backstory. I want to know why he's a bad person. I don't want to... It's like bully characters. They can so often be flat and undefined. They're just the bully character, the bully stereotype. So, aside from that, we have nowhere near as interesting a plot. We have spooky kids that are just so over the top and badly portrayed, and it's just not scary. It has none of the subtlety. The Bagul is shown scene after scene after scene, so there's no mystery behind him anymore. He's no longer frightening. In the first film, they so slowly, subtly brought him into the film through these images, and I thought that was great, instead of just silly little jump scares. I'm not saying Sinister is that great. I am, however, saying Sinister 2 was terrible, really bad. So, that is my rant on horror films today. That is my discussion on Jake Paul today. Sorry it's a bit of a short video that isn't that structured. I'm just not feeling too well after last night. I'm very tired, as you may have noticed. I'm clearly filming at night time. So, thank you so much for joining me anyway. I do hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to see more of these Let's Talk videos or more on horror and other movie reviews, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like and subscribe if you want to help support my content. You have my Twitter and Patreon below if you're interested in checking either of those out. If you join my Twitter, I'm often on there sending out pictures of my cats being silly or my chickens, so it's good fun, and feel free to add me and we can have a chat if you have any questions. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care now. Bye now.